What's up, y'all? It's MacAction coming at you with another reaction. Today we're doing Jordan Peterson's most savage comebacks. Jordan Peterson is a very wise, intelligent individual. I like a lot of his content. I've seen a lot of his content. I feel like I've seen this particular interview, but I'm not sure. I don't know how much content in this Savage Comebacks compilation I've seen, but we're going to check it out. He's sort of a controversial figure in today's climate, even though I wouldn't consider him so. I just consider him such a he's like a very calculated, data-driven person. So when you're that kind of person, you kind of people consider you rude. You ever see a person who tells people the truth all the time? They seem rude, but it's really not rude. They're just trying to like be direct towards you, like just trying to tell you what they've gathered, right? But let's check it out.
How much responsibility do you feel that you have, particularly guys the alt-right, who, as you say, some of them have enjoyed your work and say,
No,
I'm not one of you guys. I'm not with you guys.
They haven't enjoyed my work.
I've definitely read bits on the internet.
Read more.
Do you think
Already
a
being
trans
savage.
woman is a real woman?
I don't really like the way those questions are formulated. You know, I don't know what that means. What do you mean a real woman?
Well, I'm asking you, in your mind, you know, it depends what you think a real woman is, but do you think a trans woman is a woman?
These kind of questions are so loaded that it's ridiculous. It's like, hey, if I come from a place of science, that sort of question is obvious to you, especially if you're another intellect, right? Like, that's an obvious question. If I'm going off of the scientific data, you should already know my answer to this question, right?
No,
Why not?
because I think that women are capable, generally speaking, of having babies, and they have female genitalia, and they have an XX chromosome, and I think the biological markers are relevant.
I'm interested in people being able to have different choices.
I feel like that wasn't that savage. That was more like, bruh, that's truth, right? But and I'm not the kind of guy that hates anybody for anything, for their choices or nothing. But if you ask me a question and you expect some kind of true answer, especially in an interview setting, then you're going to get that interview setting answer, you know, the truth, right?
And having equality of outcome.
Aha, well, so the overwhelming proportion of people who are in prisons are male. Now, do you want to
Facts.
equalize that?
Facts.
Just out of curiosity? What about bricklayers? They're 99% male. And we've got about 3/4 of the population now in universities in the humanities and social sciences are female.
Yeah.
Are we going to equalize that? And men work longer hours. They work more dangerous jobs. They're more likely to move. They're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to participate in jobs in the STEM fields that are scalable. They make more money for those reasons.
Yeah.
And that's all hidden under the idea that the reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender. It's a very simplistic analysis.
Why are you against?
I mean, think about all the places you've worked, right? Every female I've ever worked with was getting the same exact pay as me. So I worked at this place. I won't name the place, but when I went in, I'm sort of a what do you call it? I am very assertive, especially when I'm in the work environment, right? So, I always ask my boss about pay, like, hey, shouldn't I be making more, or is it time for me to get a raise? And always bring the question up. And I noticed my female co-workers, I ended up making more money than them. I even ended up making more money than people who had been there for years that were males, right? It was because I was very assertive in that area. I would always go and ask for a raise, or go and ask, when is my next raise, or ask how can I develop more, or how can I move forward? And I would always tell my female co-worker to do the same. And you know what? She started doing the same. She started demanding more pay or asking, right? And she would move forward, and she gained the confidence just by me showing her how assertive I was and teaching her how to be assertive, right? And then expecting it out of her, and she started performing, and she started moving up in pay, and it works, right?
It's the use of alternate pronouns.
I'm against the use of legislation to determine what words that myself and other people are required to utter.
But would you use alternate pronouns if a student asked you to?
I think I've made my position on that clear already.
Well, perhaps not to our audience at home who are just being introduced to this. Would you use alternate pronouns?
You know what's funny? It's like, why do they ask these sort of questions? Like, the answer he gives, is it going to start a new argument on the panel, or do they just want to expose? I feel like they just want to expose to make a sound bite, right? That's what the game seems to be like. I've seen so many interviews with like other countries' presidents and leaders like Africa or Qatar. They try to get them to say inflammatory language. Like they try to get them to like discriminate openly. And they try to get them to say like they don't like a certain group of people or they don't accept a group of people. Luckily, most of them did not fall for that type of questioning. And Jordan Peterson seems like a person who almost never falls for that type of questioning. Kudos to you, bro.
And why not?
Because I don't believe that other people have the right to determine what language I use, especially when it's backed by punitive legislation. And when the words that are being required are the constructions, they're artificial constructions of people I regard as radical ideologues whose viewpoint I do not share.
Until women got full legal rights, they could own property for themselves, they could work. Essentially, they were owned. They were first owned by their fathers and then by their husbands.
Status to the domination by men.
Yeah.
You already said that you thought that what emancipated women primarily in the 20th century was technological revolution.
No, not primarily, but that's one of two. I think that's two things.
It's not primarily, eh?
No,
you don't think the pill was a primary force in the
Peterson looks
emancipation
kind
of
of
women?
a
Or the invention of
little frustrated with this
tampons,
lady.
let's say, or the provision of proper sanitary facilities, toilets, and that sort of thing. You're thinking instead it was the action of courageous feminists in the 1920s that produced a social revolution that overthrew the patriarchy. That's your theory.
Yeah, I think
that's a foolish theory.
He didn't even give her a chance to answer. Wow. I feel bad for the people who have to go through these kind of protests when they're just trying to speak a truth, right? It's so weird. And it's like, instead of protesting him, gather a bunch of your intelligent students and teach him something, or stand up and ask a question. Ask him why he thinks this, and he'll give you data, and you go research the same data and see if you come up with the same answers. Don't research pseudoscience. When you research, stay away from the pseudoscience. Stay away from the research that they don't have enough variance in the research. They don't have a big enough pool, right? Stay away from certain kinds of research that don't have any longevity, short research that just happened by obvious activists, right? You gotta be careful when you look at certain research. And then when you look at research from China. Look at research from every country, not just our country. Our countries aren't the only ones doing research, right? There's studies from all across the globe.
That's pure narcissism at work, by the way.
That's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. They're in Queens? I've never seen this. What is this lecture? This is something I've never seen right here.
You know, to hijack an event like this that other people put time and effort into, and to use their civility of the crowd and the civility of the organizers as an excuse to blatantly yell out your ill-informed opinions is no way to conduct a civil dialogue.
Ill-informed
It's
indeed.
absolutely appalling. The people who do that should be embarrassed.
my idea of the patriarchy is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
Very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men.
Equality is such a weird subject. It's like, do these people who fight for equality? Because it's like, where do you draw the line? Like, when do you feel that things are equal? Is it when everybody has 50, 50, 50, 50, 50? Poor people have 50% of everything. Everybody has 50% of everything. Everyone's represented 50% everywhere. Is that what people are shooting for? I have no idea. Somebody actually educate me in the comments, because I don't know what they mean by equality anymore. Like, I actually don't. This is actually genuine. Like, what is the goal of people who are striving and fighting for equality? I haven't, as a black man in America, I have not felt unequal to anyone, right? Except someone who's obviously superior in certain ways or inferior in certain ways. There are people who are stronger than me, weaker than me, taller than me, shorter than me, smarter than me, less smart. There's all kinds of inequalities that you just can't fix. I don't understand how they're gonna make. What is their plan for world equalness? I just made up that, coined by me. World equalness. I don't get it, to be honest. So somebody who is an activist in that area, share with me what it actually means, and I'll try to answer. I'll try to respond back.
Most people in prison are men. Most people
True.
who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate.
But I could say equally well that most rape victims are women. You know, terrible things happen to people of both sexes.
And you could say that with perfect utility, but that doesn't provide any evidence for the existence of a male-dominated patriarchy.
That's true. Also, yeah, what do they mean by patriarchy? I mean, I understand the definition of the word patriarchy, but like, I heard what she said, the world dominated by men, right? But in Jordan Peterson said, in what sense? And that's a good question, because it's like, is it because we have a male president? Is it a matriarchy when we get a female president? When is it not a patriarchy? Is it when most women have more than most men? Is that when it's not a patriarchy anymore? And then what is it? Is it now equal when women have more than men? These questions are so weird.
I would say that anybody with more than a cursory knowledge of 20th century history who dares to claim simultaneously that they have compassion for the downtrodden and that they're Marxists are revealing either an ignorance of history that's so astounding that it's actually a form of miracle, or a kind of or a kind of malevolence that's so reprehensible that it's almost unspeakable. Because we already ran the equity experiment over the course of the 20th century, and we already know what the Marxist doctrines have done for oppressed people all around the world. And the answer to that mostly was imprison them, enslave them, work them to death, or execute them. And as far as I can tell, that's not precisely commensurate with any message of compassion. Sorry, tried that, didn't work. We got 100 million corpses to prove it, and that's plenty for me. And if it's not enough for you, well, then you should do some serious thinking, either about your historical knowledge or about your moral character.
Well
Question
said.
for
Well
Professor
said.
Peterson. Why do you feel that someone's personal gender identity and pronouns infringes your free speech? Can one not also argue, based on your interpretation, that professors can use racial slurs in their classroom and that the inability to do so would violate their free?
I'm gonna tell you, the reason I don't have problems with it is because I don't care what people are doing. Like, is that how you feel? Is that how you and your friends are talking to each other? I mind my business. I don't engage in neology, like with everyone who uses, neo-centric terms in language or whatever. I don't, they don't demand me to speak that way, right? And I don't have to. It's my choice.
Freedom of speech.
There's a difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say.
Yeah.
And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical PC authoritarians. Do you understand that? And I'm not a fan of that sort of person. And the reason I'm not a fan of that sort of person is because I've done my homework. I've read everything I can get my hands on in the development of authoritarian political systems, and I know the literature inside out and backwards. And I am not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest.
Yeah.
And that's that. This whole patriarchy thing, I think you have no idea how pernicious and dangerous it is.
Well, no, I don't.
Men
I
and
really don't.
women
Go on.
throughout history have fundamentally cooperated to push back against
Right. How do you think we got this
absolute
far?
catastrophe of existence. A terrible death rate, the probability of chronic starvation.
I don't know where I heard this from. It was from either from a TV show or somebody said it on somewhere on YouTube, but he was saying if women were so oppressed, where did the term ladies first come from? Why was it always ladies first? The Titanic. Back in the days, ladies first. We always protect the women and children. We strive to protect our women and children throughout life. You know, that's just how it's always been.
Disease, the difficulty of raising children with all the death that was associated with that. And to look backwards in time and say, well, basically what happened was men took the upper hand and persecuted women.
That's so
in
weird.
These tyrannical patriarchies. It's absolutely dreadful misreading of history. It's a terrible thing to teach young women, and it's a horrible thing to inflict upon men.
When the Marxists say, well, that wasn't real Marxism, what it really means, and I've thought about this for a long time, it's the most arrogant possible statement anyone could ever make. It means if I would have been in Stalin's position, I would have ushered in the damn utopia instead of the genocidal massacres.
A better way.
Because I understand the doctrine of Marxism and everything about me is good. It's like, well, think again, sunshine. You don't understand it. You don't understand it. And you're not that good. And if the power was in your hands, assuming you had the competence, which
implemented
you don't,
the Marxist strategy,
you wouldn't have done any better. And even if you had, there would have been someone else waiting right behind you to shoot you the first time you actually tried to do anything good. And that's what happened to all the old guard who ran the damn revolution. Stalin rounded them all up and shot them, along with their families and millions of other people. So even if you do happen to be that avatar of moral purity that you claim implicitly, the probability that you'd get to act out your goodness in relationship to those possessed by your ideology is zero.
Yeah.
Is being sensitive to offence such a problem, though? Like, we would have previously called that manners.
It's a terrible problem. So
manners had nothing to do with offense. It was more about formalities, right? You talk to people older than you in a certain way, and you're nice to people who you don't know, strangers, just being nice, right? In a traditional way. Manners are just a word for treating someone nice, and the way you treat them nice is a formal way that we're treating them nice, a known traditional way of treating people nice, right? And respecting them, right? If I'm talking to someone and I say something, an opinion that they don't like, that it has nothing to do with manners. I don't get it.
imagine you, okay, so the rule is you can't offend anyone, all right? Let's say you're speaking to one person, I can't offend you. All right, fair enough. What if I'm speaking to 10 people? Do I get to offend 1 in 10? How about 1 in 100? How about 1 in 1,000? You're going to come out on stage and you're going to say something important about something vital, and you're not going to offend one person in 1,000?
You're going to always offend somebody.
You can't say anything about anything important ever without offending probably the person you're talking to. Important speech about important issues, especially contentious issues, is instantly offensive.
Yeah. Yeah, that was all pretty good, man. Yeah, not so savage. I mean, some of them were actually savage, but it was just Jordan Peterson being Jordan Peterson. He always seems like a savage. But yeah, when he's talking about that offense thing, he's spot on. Because if you talk about something of importance, you're always going to offend somebody. Because when you think about it, let's say we're talking about your weight loss and you happen to be overweight. Us discussing your weight and your health, this might offend you, right? Sometimes that you're telling objective truth and it still offends, right? You offend people these days with reality. Reality is offensive. Like, hey, you're overweight. Offended. Hey, you're not that beautiful. Offended. And I think it's because they think everything's subjective. They think everything's subjective and everything's a social construct. And that's just absolutely not right. Like, especially when it comes to men and women, you think, why would it be that women are like women everywhere on the planet? right? And men are like men everywhere on the planet. We have not like merged the societies, like, you know, that our societies haven't been merged forever, right? There's times when we were like whole oceans across from each other and we couldn't even reach each other. And those women were still women, and these women were still just like women. You can tell a woman was a woman no matter what culture you visited. Guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave some recommendations, and I'll see you guys next time.